Okay, I'm going to do a quick summary about the procedure and the materials I used in installing a bonded side window on a Sprinter van. As you can see what I've done here. Alright, so here are the materials that I used. I've got an electric drill there. You don't have to have an electric drill, but it makes things easier with the drill bits to cut into metal. I used the 5mm drill bit for the small holes and the 8mm drill bit for the large hole to get my jigsaw blade in, because obviously the small holes aren't big enough for the jigsaw blade, so I just use the small holes for the outline, the big hole to kind of use to put my jigsaw blade in and start the cutting. Right, I've drilled the holes, as you can see on this side, all around to the other side what it looks like. And there you go. You can you see that? After that, I also used a pen and ruler to draw around the edge of the holes to draw the outline, and then applied the tape, which is blue tape, and then also duct tape to protect the paint when using the jigsaw. And you put little bits of tape here just along every single line here for the curves, just little bits to make a nice curve there, and you do it just close enough so that it's accurate. And the tape goes on there, and this is my last piece of masking tape. Actually, what you do, you put this on to actually stop the jigsaw from, when you're using the jigsaw, from scratching the paint here, because actually it scratches massively because it shakes so much when you're cutting the metal. So that's the reasoning behind it, and that's it. That's what you got to do. You just got to put every small bit of tape here to make sure it gives a nice curve, and on the other side there's kind of a lip. On the other side there's a kind of lip, because it's a double-sided, double-layered piece of metal, and you don't want to have to cut like twice through two different bits of metal. So you just want to put the tape just high enough so that it cuts this layer of metal without cutting the lip on the other side, if you know what I mean. Anyway, and you got the jigsaw and the blades here. I had these long blades at first, but they kept breaking, so I bought these smaller blades later on, and they're very kind of fine toothed blades, supposed to be a depth of 1.1 to 1.5 millimeters. The metal depth of the van is probably about 1.5 millimeters, but the actual blades, they've got very fine teeth, so try and get something similar with short blades and fine teeth cutting through metal. And that's an old Black & Decker jigsaw. And then I've got the suckers here as well. That's for the window, but also to place on the inside of the van, just on a panel that you cut out, so that you can grab it, or your assistant can grab it just after you finished cutting, so it doesn't just fall. And you don't have to use the sucker, obviously. You can just use your hands. It's just easier to use with the sucker. And there's a metal file here to shave away the sides. Try and get it as accurate as possible when you're cutting on first time, because actually the file there, it really doesn't remove much, and it's just a real pain to use. Try and get it as close, when you're cutting on the outside, try and get it as close to this inner lip here, because you really don't want to have to shave off too much, or if you've gone too deep, then it's like you've got to cut through two bits of metal and it's just not accurate. So try and get it as close to that as possible without cutting it or shaving it or whatever. And then vacuum clean, which I haven't got a vacuum cleaner here, but I used the vacuum cleaner to take away all the kind of shards of metal, all the nooks and crannies, so it doesn't rust. And here is the black paint that I used, the Hammerite smooth finish kind of anti-rust metal protection paint that you can actually apply directly to rust, but all it does is you can apply it to just direct metal and it'll protect the metal from rusting. So yeah, and you just make sure there's a good layer on the edges that you cut, and you have to leave it for a good 2 hours, I'd say, or maybe less than that, but about 2 hours to make sure that it's dry. And the sandpaper here, these are just A4 size of sandpaper. I use 1000 grit sandpaper, which I used on the kind of metal before applying the bonding agent, and that's just to make it kind of grip more easily. And then after that, before actually applying the bonding agent, I use this acetone here with some tissue to kind of clean it up, and that's to remove all the dust and stuff, all the muck, before actually applying the glue. And here's the gasket, which is actually a little bit tricky to install. You've got to make sure that you hammer it on, because it's basically like a kind of pinch. You kind of hammer it on to make sure it pinches the edge of the metal. But the thing is, actually, the edge of the metal can actually be a bit too thick, so you might need to actually pinch the metal itself, or try and bend it a little bit to make it kind of closer together, so that you can actually fit the gasket on more easily. I did it with like just a plank of wood that I kind of leant on, and just leant on the edge of the plank of wood and on the edge of the metal to kind of press the metal together. Or you can use like a clamp or something, and I actually used the clamp as well after hammering on the gasket, just to make it kind of grip the edge more tightly. And then there's the primer, which isn't here. It's also in the description of the video. The primer actually comes with a kit for the window.
One long line like this, all the way around. I'm just going to put a bit more on and go over it again, make sure it's nice and thick, to leave a nice surface for the sealant to be applied to. Nice, I think that's alright.
And the alcohol wipes and all that, and the bonding glue can here. This is the actual bonding gun is here, which I used, and yeah, electric one is probably easier. That was actually really hard. It is actually, it's very tiring to use, gripping your hand for that long, and it's really difficult to get right, because you can get too much coming out of the can when you're applying the glue, or too little, or whatever. It's just difficult to do. So I don't know, you might want to look into an electric one or take a risk with the mechanical one. It's possible with the mechanical one, but it's just difficult to get it just right the first time. But yeah, you can do either or, it's up to you. I went with the mechanical, and I probably applied too much glue. It's supposed to be 1 can per window that you use. I use 1.5 per window pretty much, so I always applied too much, probably.
When applying the urethane, make sure that the V-shaped notch in the tip is at the trailing end of the bead. This will create a perfect cone-shaped bead. If you do not have a cone-shaped cut in your tip, you can easily cut a V-shaped notch into the tip with your utility knife. During the urethane application, travel at a smooth and continuous pace. This will allow the urethane to be applied in an even and solid bead.
Then obviously to apply the window, the suckers on the window, you don't need it, but it just makes things easier. They cost me about £5 each. And then when you apply the window, you put the tape, we use the masking tape to apply it. I also use some spacers, these kind of rolled up pieces of cardboard under the window, to kind of just measure the amount of space around the window. It's supposed to be around 3 to 4 millimeters, maybe less than that, maybe 3 millimeters. And you just put it under the window to make sure it's kind of accurate. There's the space around the window is the same sort of thing, and it's centered. And yeah, you leave it for 24 hours, and wait for it to dry. So yeah, that's the materials that I used, and more or less the procedure. And that's it. That's the end result, really. The window there. And I've got one here. This is the opening window on one side. On the other side, I probably did a better job on the other side because I put the right amount of glue on there. But it's here. This window, you can't see it because it's black, but essentially this is a window here. And that was, I think that I did a much cleaner job on this one, and it just blends much better with the van, whereas the opening window kind of looks a little bit messier. It's in the right place, but it does have glue kind of sticking out the tops, which is pretty annoying. I'd try and avoid that if I was doing it again. See, I put a lot of glue at the top here, a lot of glue on the sides, and when applying the actual window, it kind of spilled out a bit and obviously dried, so I might have to take a blade to that and try and cut it out to make it give it a cleaner look, a more flush look. And that's it. That's everything, I think. Yeah, if you've got a comment, please comment, like the video if you like it, and yeah, please subscribe, and yeah, cheers for watching. Thanks.